Good morning and welcome to the Valley Sports Telegram Weekly Roundup with Kenny Hodges. I'm Arsha Versarian, and we've got an exciting slate to get into. We had the East Valley League and the Valley Mission League start league play. And there were some battles and there were some surprises. Um, and I mean, just gotta say, once you start playing the games that people say matter, um, you start showing us who you really are.
For sure. This week was a week where you kind of really got a sense of who these teams were starting to find their identities and kind of rounding the shape. And when you get into league play, now you start to have teams face each other that have some familiarity. These teams know who each other are, and you find yourself in some great games and some great battles. And also, even though the West Valley did not get under play just yet, they produced a couple of noteworthy games with some noteworthy results as well. So
Yeah, and I mean we'll start off with the Valley Mission games. Kennedy went into Van Nuys and did what Kennedy is expected to do, and they walked away with a 58-2 win. Panorama was at Canoga Park. That was a bit of a surprise for people not looking really deep. Canoga Park came away with the win there, 23-6. We'll touch on that again in a minute. Crenshaw visited Sylmar. Sylmar hosted and came out on top, 31-20 in what I think we called a bit of a trap game.
Oh yeah, and that's 3 wins in a row for Sylmar as they head into their league opener against Panorama. They're kind of laying down a gauntlet and letting people know that they're going to be a team to contend with this year in their league. So that was a good win for them and a great bounce back for them. They opened up the season with a disappointing loss against Fairfax, and since then they haven't looked back.
Yeah, and another bounce back was San Fernando going into Reseda and taking care of their business, 19-0 there.
Yeah, San Fernando's first win of the year. Like I said, we kind of have an idea of what we're going to get from Reseda this year. They're fighting tooth and nail. You can see the talent's there, but the program is in a little bit of a rebuild under first-year head coach Austin. So they're going to be in these games. They're going to fight you tooth and nail. They're going to be there. If you slip up and don't come with your best effort, they might be able to sneak out a win or two. But it's just going to be a tough year as they kind of rebuild that thing back to where they want it to be.
Yeah, on that, Austin Ward told me before the season that all he was expecting from his team was to show up and fight for every yard on every play. And from what I've seen, they're doing that. Some of the other stuff, it'll get cleaned up with experience and time. All you can ask is to fight.
Yeah, the truth of the matter is they lost a lot of bodies before the year, where a lot of kids had transferred and went other places. And it takes some time to kind of get that thing back to where you want it to be. They have an identity. He has an idea of what he wants his team to be. And you see that they fight when they're out there on the field. It's going to take a minute for them to get back to the position they were in before. But the confidence is there that they'll do it.
Yeah. And, going in to the next one, Pauley visited Chavez. And Chavez is a school we've been kind of looking at a little closely. They came out on top. 30-14 over Pauley.
That was their first game in 3 weeks because of the bye and then having lost that game during the heat wave. This was the first time Chavez had taken the field in 3 weeks. And you wanted to see if they were going to be rusty. And no, they came out and they laid the hammer early and they put their game away on Pauley. So Chavez is also establishing themselves as a team that might be a contender in the East Valley this year.
And then Chatsworth hosted Heritage Christian in what was pretty surprising to me. They laid an egg, and Heritage came out on top, 43-0.
The theme in this game was big plays and big mistakes. Heritage Christian is a talented group. If you give them opportunities to lay the hammer on you, they will. I think a microcosm of what happened in this game, or the story of this game, can be found pretty early on in the game. First drive of the game, Chatsworth had 2 touchdowns called back on penalties. One of them was a 4th and 20 conversion that got called back. So that's kind of been the story of Chatsworth this year. They are a talented bunch, but they tend to get in their own way. They got to get some things cleaned up before they get into league play.
El Camino visited Narbonne, and that was a statement win for them, 32-22.
One of my favorite players in all of the Valley to cover this year has been the quarterback of El Camino, Javen Hall. He's starting to round into shape. He's finding his rhythm in the passing game, and they killed Narbonne with timely passing. This kid can spin it, and he showed it in this game. Absolutely destroyed Narbonne with dig routes and underneath routes to his receivers. That kid is going to be one that you have to deal with in the West Valley this year. If any of the big dogs in the West Valley sleep on El Camino, Javen Hall will come into your backyard and take one from you.
I can see that. And another kind of bounce back was Taft going into Hawkins and coming away 50-14. They're starting to take care of business now.
That's 3 out of 4 now for Taft. We talked about coming into the year, the idea that they were going to have a tough road to go, having to play the entire slate on the road. And they are 3-2 in the first 5, which I think is a bit of a success for them. The last 2 weeks, they've put up 97 points on their last 2 opponents. This game against Hawkins, Harrison Knable and Roman Broussard were terrors on their defensive line, and they were difference makers. Now they've got a week to kind of rest and recover, but they're going to need those guys to play that way when they see Birmingham out of the chute to get their league play going.
And, staying in that league, Granada was upended by Eagle Rock. That was a little surprising when I saw the score line. It was 37-22.
Yeah, that game, it was a good game. The score line might be a little not as indicative of how close the 2 teams were, but Eagle Rock's balanced attack was a little bit too much for Granada to handle. They kept the Granada defense off balance all night, being able to mix the run in and the pass together, and might have exposed a little bit of what Granada's weakness might be. And as if you get a lead on them and force their young quarterback to have to make plays, they could find themselves in a little bit of trouble. So we'll see how they kind of remedy that going forward.
I think the last one on our list, kicking off their East Valley League Revenge Tour, Monroe went into Verdugo Hills and put a hurting 54-0.
I mean, a statement win from Monroe. I mean, there's no other way to sugarcoat that one. They're kids, these seniors, they're upperclassmen. They've been there for a couple of years and had to take their lumps. And it feels like you're getting the sense that this might be a team that feels like they've got a chance to get some get back now this year in a wide open league. And they went into Monroe and they went into Verdugo Hills and they put the hammer on
them. And that was a bit of a tough one to watch. As just being neutral and trying to figure out, okay, what team is bringing what? And with Verdugo Hills coming into the season having expectations of being competitive, they're not completely out of it yet, but to see some of these kids come out and there's a drop ball that goes right into the lap of the defender and he just stopped running. He walked off the field. Like, there's things creeping into these kids' heads. And I'm going to say it's not from Coach Jackson. He's run a ship and he's run it tight. And he's had success even at Verdugo, different levels. And so, you look at some of these kids and you're like, well, are you here to play football? Or are you here to look like you play football? And I don't want to, bring a hammer down too hard. But ultimately, when you put on a uniform on Friday night, you want to play and really play.
It hasn't been the start they wanted to get off to this year, right? You got to feel like a lot of the teams in the East Valley, understanding that Arleta kind of ran roughshod on everybody last year, but this thing was going to be wide open because that running back that had over 2,000 yards, he's not there anymore. That opens things up. So everybody comes into the season with a little sense of optimism, a sense that you might be able to compete and take the league title for yourself. But the problem is when you have expectation and you don't meet them at a baseline level, guys have to then put themselves in position to make two choices. We can kind of dig back in, look at ourselves hard in the mirror and say, what can I do to kind of help turn this thing around? Or you can feel sorry for yourself and take that onto the field with you. And most coaches will tell you, if you choose the second option, you're not even giving yourself a chance to compete in a game. If you're already bringing, it's tough. You don't want to say a loser's mentality because that's not the right word. But if you're feeling sorry for yourself and not willing to kind of dig in and do the work, you're going to find yourself in these sort of situations where now you're looking up and you're, what are they, 0-3 now, coming off a 50-point loss. They've got to make a decision right now who they want to be going forward, because what they put on the field and that effort they put on the field against Monroe, that ain't going to cut it. That ain't even going to cut it next week when you go play Van Nuys, let alone anybody else this year.
No, not at all. And it's up to the kids who put on the uniform. The coaches can do everything Saturday through Thursday. Sunday's always an off day. Saturday's film. Monday through Thursday, you've got practice, walkthrough, all that preparation. If when you strap on your uniform, you're not looking to play, you're not mentally there, you're thinking we need to do X, Y, and Z, you are setting yourself up for a big, big disappointment. Keeping on the theme of commitment, that goes right into one of our gems for the week. You have a program that's committed to being a tough, hard-nosed, physical defense in Arleta. And they still have, Coach Scott running that defense, and he's been running it forever. And that's his calling card. This defense is going to stand you up, make you work, and you're not getting anything against us. And they were hosting North Hollywood in a game where we said, what is this team going to show? Because Jalen Burt was averaging over 150 yards, and he was averaging only 10 carries a game. So this sophomore's coming in with the North Hollywood team, and they're just going to run the ball. And how was our leader going to stop them? That was the question. And ultimately, that defense showed that they are who we think they are. This defense is going to stand you up. It's going to hit you in the mouth. It's going to make you work for every inch on that field. Jalen Burt got 94 yards, which is a commendable number. But they made him work. He had 19 carries, which is almost double his high this season in terms of carries. Senior Ronnie Gibson, his number 2 on that set, he had 10 carries. He also went 94 yards. And he was kind of a change of pace. And he used that and found the end zone. But that was a game that finished 16-0. There were only 2 scores. So when you come in and you hold this offense, who has been scoring almost at will, to 2 scores, and one of them, it was a pass, which North Hollywood has not been known for this season, then okay, that's a moral victory. And people don't really like those. But I would walk into the locker room and say, hey, our defense did their job.
Yeah.
Now, what do we work on, which is the offense?
Oh yeah, and that's the thing. If you're gonna pull positive, kind of changing gears away from kind of what we saw with Verdugo this week, uh, the positives you pull out of what you saw from Arleta is nothing is changing in this program in terms of what their identity is and what their approach is going to be to a game from week to week to week. Offensively, are they struggling? Yeah. They broke out a little bit against Santee last week, but they're still having to figure some things out on that side of the ball. Excuse me. Which we knew they were going to have to, because there was a lot of that was the side of the ball that you saw the most sort of changeover, where you were going to have to kind of reinvent the identity of what they were. Last year, they were just smash mouth. We're coming at you. We're going to wear you down, and that was how they were going to win games. This year, they have to find a bit more of a balance. But defensively, they're going to hang in there. We've seen them from the first week, from the beginning of the season against Granada to this game against North Hollywood. They have improved steadily week by week by week, and they've kind of reestablished that bulldog sort of mentality up front. And they're gonna hang in there, and they're gonna make you earn whatever you get against them is going to be earned. North Hollywood with Burt and Gibson, that's their thunder and lightning combination. Burt's gonna hit you with the flash, and Gibson is usually the guy who comes in to pound it on you in short yards. That's tough to deal with. So the fact that they only found the end zone twice in this game tells you that our leader, if they could ever kind of find a little bit of consistency on the offensive side of the ball, it's not a foregone conclusion that they're not going to be in the mix to win this league by the time the dust settles at the end of the year. They just kind of have to find some things that work for them on a weekly basis for them to get in the range. Realistically, if the way this defense plays, if they can find a way to put 20 points on the board every week, they're going to win games. Because that defense is that the way it looks right now, their defense is saying we'll hold who we're going up against to 2 scores. We can hold teams in place. If you guys can put up 2 and find a way to get 2 or 3 touchdowns on the board, hell, maybe on the defensive side, maybe they can find a way to put one in the end zone themselves. But they know we're going to be in this game. Our leader knows every week we're going to be in this game. It's just a matter of the staff can kind of put together the formula to just move the ball and finish these drives off. So it's positive. It's still moving. Despite a 16-0 loss, you still walk away feeling positive about what our leader can do for the rest of this year going forward.
Yeah, no, and it really does come down to just transferring what happens Monday through Thursday and putting it on the field on Friday. And like we said, a couple moments ago when we were talking about Verdugo, when those kids put on that uniform on Friday, where's the headspace? Is that line going to block? Are they going to give the quarterback time? Because Kennedy Duran can sling it. When he has time, he's calm enough to try to manage a game. But you got to give him time, and you got to allow him to grow comfortable. And if you don't, you're going to see some of the scores that you saw in the past, but that defense is really coming back to its identity. And, when I look at the schedule ahead, I'm like, okay, some of these teams are going to see this defense and think, what do we do? Because they're going to punch you in the mouth.
And the more I think about it, maybe that's the answer for them offensively, right? Putting the ball in his hand, maybe going a little bit more heavy with the RPO and giving him the opportunity to kind of read the defense and make a play. That's just something they may just have to consider as their best opportunity to win games going forward, because that kid is a talent that can make things happen. We've seen it happen. Santee, he made plays. He extended some plays. He got outside the pocket a little bit. That may be the thing that they need to kind of spark them on that side of the ball, because the thing is, you want to support this defense as best you can, and the defense is going to give you opportunities with a short field. Let's put the ball in Kennedy Duran's hands and let the guy cook. Let's see what he can do. I think that might be the thing they need to do going forward.
Yeah, and I mean, we'll get into it a little more when we look ahead, but there's a couple opportunities to do that. And we'll see kind of how this grows and evolves. Um, but I can't hold it off any longer. I've been waiting to have this conversation since Friday night. You were at Cleveland and you saw a definite gem. Our game of the week lived up to the hype. So take it away.
Yes, the VST game of the week was indeed the number 2 ranked team in the city, Palisades, coming into Cleveland to take on an unbeaten Cleveland Cavaliers team, and the Cavaliers got it done 34-14. So right off the bat, kudos to both of these teams for scheduling this game. This was an opportunity for both teams. They lost games due to cancellations a couple of weeks ago, and it just lined up that they both had an opportunity, a space to fit a game in, and they decided to. And I don't know who made the call to set it up, but they decided to play each other. And you know what? There's an inherent risk with adding a game like this because one of these two teams that have designs are going pretty far this year and potentially adding a year to a banner, winning a ring, was setting themselves up potentially to lose a game that wasn't a loss that would have been accounted for before the season started. So kudos to both sides for taking the initiative and saying, hey, you're a great team. We're a great team. Hey, look, you got an open week. Let's not lose a game. Let's play each other. Right off the bat, Palisades came out different than I thought they would. Christopher Washington, their talented running back, has kind of been the bell cow for them this year. They play a two quarterback system with Zach Lifton and Roman Lascala. But their bread and butter is running the football. But they came out throwing the ball in this game. Maybe it was because they assumed that Cleveland would be keyed in on the run, so they tried to come out throwing the ball, and they actually had an opportunity early in the game to take the lead, and they had a drop touchdown by Michael King-Hagan. But this early story in this game was Cleveland let you know right from the jump that they were here to play. They were here to play with one of the best teams in the city, and Corey Hall, we talk about him a lot this year. He's in the running to be maybe the player of the year in the city section. Corey Hall was doing Corey Hall things right off the bat. After that missed opportunity to have a touchdown, they tried to go back to the well again. He defends the play beautifully. Ball pops up in the air. He takes it back. Now Cleveland's going the other way, and they ended up taking an early lead. They did a great job early in this game of kind of controlling the tempo of the game. The first quarter, after that early score, Palisades gets the ball back. They move the ball a little bit. Cleveland kind of shuts them down. They controlled time of possession. They controlled that entire first quarter. Now, Palisades, because they are a really good team, they got an opportunity to tie the game up early in the second quarter. They hit a bomb over the top. They tied the game up, and you kind of could feel, okay, we've got a game here. Palisades is not going to go away, even though they didn't look great in the first quarter. They came right back, tied the game up. Cleveland did some things in this game that I thought were excellent. Obviously, their defense got stops. They really found ways to kind of control how much Christopher Washington was going to wreck the game for them. Like, that kid we see it with great backs. We talk about the Stanleys all the time. When we talk about Cleveland's running back, Donovan Powell, we talk about some of the runners that we've seen. They can break runs and kind of break the back of the opponent because you can play defense well for 2 downs, and then on third down, they kind of get loose and take 160 yards. And next thing you know, you've got you down on the scoreboard, and it really breaks the will and spirit of a team. Cleveland never let this kid do this that entire game. He would get a run. He might break one for 10 or 12 yards, but he wasn't going to break that second tackle or that guy coming up. And a lot of times you give the credit to Corey Hall because he's kind of the eraser back there. If you get through the second level, you're not going to get through the third level with him. So they did a great job kind of containing the thing that Palisades does the best. And on offense, they found creative ways to get the ball in the hands of Donovan Powell because Palisades has a great front. You're not just going to run the ball down their throats. So how do you get the ball to your best playmaker or your game breaker? You can't just hand him up the middle and think he's going to break it. No, you got to find ways. So they started running bubble screens with him. They started throwing it to him out in the flat, get him out in some space where all he's got to do is maybe break a tackle or two, and then he can move the chains. So they did a great job doing that as well. But the biggest theme in this game was opportunities. Both teams provided opportunities for the other side to kind of break the game open or change the trajectory of the ball game at different points. And it was just a matter of who was going to be able to take advantage of those opportunities. Palisades had a great chance late in the first half. Well, before we get into that, we got to talk into maybe the most controversial play of the first half, which was Cleveland up 14-7. Doing a great job. They got a stop on Palisades. They're driving the ball. Nano Lopez, who was throwing great, he was throwing dimes all over the place all night. He throws a ball over the top. Tight coverage on Corey Hall going down the sideline. He makes a ridiculous, right in front of me as where I'm standing. He makes a ridiculous one-hand catch while the defender's draped all over him. They call an offensive pass interference. Now, I've watched it several times from different angles. I'm not really quite sure where the offensive pass interference was on that play. I feel like in that sort of situation, you either kind of let it go, or if there was an end of pass interference to be called, it might have been defensive, because I think the DB got there a hair early. But either way, it wiped away a 40-yard completion, and the drive kind of stalled out from there.
No. I watched it back a couple times too.
Mm-hmm.
And what I saw was a DB and a wide receiver kind of hand checking.
Yeah.
And hand checking is normal. You're just kind of feeling out. Where are you? No one pushed. I didn't see a push off.
No, Brown.
Defensive.
Yeah, Brown was in phase. He was in phase the whole way. He had him down the sideline. The DB was doing what the DB's supposed to do, right? You use the sideline to your advantage. You try to force that receiver out of bounds if you can. And Corey Hall just made a great play. It was incredibly disappointing because, listen, the refs, it's not an easy job. That's a bang bang play. That things are moving fast down there on the field. But my thing is, that man made a one-hand catch over his shoulder with his right hand, somehow kept the foot in bounds. I mean, it was the play of the night, and it kind of got taken off the board. It was the most spectacular play I saw this weekend, and it got taken off the board. But nevertheless, you gotta kind of move on, and you keep playing. Drive stalls out. Actually, both teams. It was the point in the game where the defense started to settle in a little bit because they kind of exchanged 3 and outs. Maybe the biggest moment or opportunity in the game for Palisades came late in the first half. Corey Hall handles the punting duties for Cleveland, and he, for the most part, he did a great job, as he normally does, punting the ball for them. But this particular one, and as it happens, came off the side of his foot a little bit. Low line drive. Palisades has a punt returner, Mariolas. This kid is dynamite if he gets the ball in his hands. And it was just one of those situations where the ball comes off his foot. It's a low line drive, 2-hopper. He catches this thing on a dead sprint, and he already is fast without help. And he brings that thing all the way down inside the 15-yard line. It's less than a minute to go, but it's exactly what Palisades needed to try to get this thing. Because if they can finish this drive, they go into halftime tied at 14, having not played their best ball, feeling like it's a brand new ball game. But Cleveland's defense did what you need to do at home, and you correct the mistake by you clamp down in the goal line. They didn't have a lot of time to get plays off. They tried to run Washington up the middle. He got stuffed. And with basically one more opportunity to go, Cleveland's defensive line makes the play. He has nowhere to go with the ball. Half ends with Cleveland up 14-7. So you go into halftime kind of feeling like this game is far from over. Palisades has had opportunities. They haven't been able to take advantage of them. Cleveland's had opportunities. They weren't able to kind of extend the thing. And now you go into halftime still with a game, still with it being anybody's ball game. Early in the third quarter, Cleveland gets the ball first to start the half. They go quick 3 and out. Pally gets the ball back. Boom, right down the field. Michael Hagan, another touchdown pass over the top. Now this thing's tied 14-14. What was impressive to me about the game from this point forward after they tied this game up, this was all Cleveland after this. Palisades really, they moved the ball some, but Cleveland's defense was bend but don't break, and they never really gave Palisades the chance to kick the door in and kind of change this game. If anything, the team that kind of kicked the door in and took advantage of the opportunities, took advantage of some of the things that Palisades was doing that were just a beat off in terms of like wayward snaps, not being able to kind of drop completions. Cleveland took advantage at every turn after that. They got the score up after Palisades turned the ball over. Touchdown throw over the top to Shackelford. They take the lead 21-14. Palisades still can't move the ball. And then we get to the fourth quarter, and that's when Corey Hall doing Corey Hall things again. This time, Nano Lopez throws the ball over the top. There's no controversy this time. Takes it, looks right at me as he's running down the sideline like, I told you I'd be back. And he puts them up 2 scores. It was a great play, and then Cleveland would add another touchdown later on to kind of extend the lead, make it 34-14, and that ended up being the final score. But the thing that you took from this game is it was just an exceptional team effort. Cleveland played well in all phases of the game. Was it Palisades' best performance? No, it was not. But they still had opportunities, but Cleveland just never allowed them to capitalize on the opportunities that they had. And Cleveland kind of came out of this game looking like the better team in a lot of respects because they made plays. It wasn't given to them. This was earned. This is not one of those games where you'll look back and be like, oh, they played in the rain and it was just sloppy and it was 14-7. No, this was 2 teams in great conditions, went out there and played a game, and one team clearly had opportunities and they took advantage of them at every turn. And when the other team had a chance, they blew a golden one early in the game that might have kind of turned the tide of how the game might have played after that. But it didn't. In the end, it didn't matter because the better team in that second half and the better team for 3 or 4 quarters were the Cleveland Cavaliers. And when I talked to Gunny after the game, I kind of asked him, what does this say about you guys in the West Valley? Because we understand, we know what they're up against in that league. We've talked a lot about the Stanley cousins at Granada Hills. We know who Birmingham has been for the last 5 years in that league and being the king of the mountain that no one can overthrow. We know Chatsworth is going to come and try to wing T run it down your throat the entire time. I've been raving about Javen Hall for weeks about what that kid might be able to do. But I asked him, I said, what does this mean for you guys in the West Valley? And he looked at me and he just said, hey, we're here. Everybody knows it. Plain and simple. If you go up against Cleveland, you're going to get a fight. And between the way that staff has this team prepared on a weekly basis, with the talent they put on the field, with a senior quarterback who is a leader in every step of the way, with what Corey Hall can do, what Donovan Powell can do. And let me mention also, they have, we talk a lot about Corey Hall, but Stephen High at corner for them and also at receiver. He made some great catches for them. They had other players step up around their star, and that was why they won the game. It's football. One guy can't beat a team alone. You got to have other guys step up around you and kind of hold their weight as well. And this was a total team effort by this team, and I am excited to see what they do going forward and to see what they do in 2 weeks when they see El Camino to open up league.
That's literally where we're at in terms of looking at, okay, these are the resumes some of these kids are putting together. This is what these teams are doing. And it's getting to be almost mid-season. It's getting to be crunch time. You are at a point where we're separating, contenders from pretenders. And, we look at some of these resumes and we go, wow, these kids, look at what they're doing. I don't think there's been a week where Corey Hall has played where we haven't said his name. And that brings us literally right into our player of the week. And for the second time, it's Corey Hall. And there's no question in my mind looking throughout the valley. There's maybe one kid whose individual performance, puts him in that conversation. We'll talk about him in honorable mention. But when we look at all around, there was no question this week was Corey Hall.
Definitely. I mean, there's not much more you can say about him other than Corey. Like I've said, he's kind of the ace of spades up there. You'd be hard pressed to find a more complete player, even though he's a junior, and which is scary because there's still ways for him to grow still. But on a week-to-week basis, when Cleveland takes the field, the other team does not have guys that are just better than him. And he doesn't just do it one way. He does it every way. The man, he punts. He's their kick returner. He is their go-to guy on 3rd and 7 when they need to move the chains. He's the guy who cleans up the plays where if the running back gets to the second level, he's the guy who comes and puts an end to it all. You try to throw it at him over the top, he's going to defend that too. He's going to put a seatbelt on whatever receiver he's locked up on. There are so many different ways that this kid gets used and utilized by this team that it's kind of hard to prepare for him because he's going to be everywhere. It's hard to prepare for him, but it's also easy because you just assume that Corey Hall is going to be everywhere if you're the opposing team. So it's a well-deserved honor this week because, you knock off the team that's the number 2. You knocked off a team that has designs on being the number 1 that's trying to get the number 1 spot in the open division when playoffs rolls around, which is why they took a game like this, because they knew if they came into Cleveland and beat a tough team on the road, that's a hell of a notch to put in their resume when it comes down to deciding who gets to be at home when you're in open division, if you're going to be in open division. And he took care of business. So he's the player of the week.
Like I said, there was one more whose performance kind of merits an honorable mention. Brandon Williams from Monroe. He's pretty sure-handed, and he brought in 9 catches on 12 targets. And he took that for the tune of 158 yards and 4 touchdowns. That in and of itself is something that any other week we kind of would have been like, I think this kid really could be the player of the week. He just happened to do that this week, and it kind of was like, well, he's getting an honorable mention. And then the other one for me is Ronnie Gibson from North Hollywood. This kid, it's his first year playing football. We've said that a lot this year.
Mm-hmm.
And there's these seniors that it's their first year playing football. And we look at them and I'm like, if only these coaches had them before. And I know the coaches thinking the same thing. Like, why couldn't I convince you as a sophomore? Because then you would have grown, and as a junior and senior, imagine how much stronger you'd be. But still, Ronnie put up 94 yards on 10 carries, and he had the touchdown that sealed the game against Arleta. So, that's still big. Jalen Burt, he works for his yards. Like I said earlier, it's kind of hard to not put him in there in an honorable mention, because he worked and got his 94 yards. But those are the 3 for me that when I look at the player of the week, I'm like, they at least need a little bit of consideration.
And an honorable mention for me, and I'm going to continue to beat this drum because by the end of this season, I'm going to be proven right, and I'm going to look like a genius. Javen Hall went on the road to Narbonne in the game they could have easily lost. That's not an easy trip to take. That's not an easy place to go play, and that's a pretty decent team and defense they went up against. While his numbers were not pretty, he made throw after throw after throw, hitting the receivers in stride, killing them with dig routes, underneath routes, extending drives, making plays, hitting receivers in stride to score touchdowns. This kid is a player to watch in the West Valley as they continue to progress. He is going to be a player that is going to scare Birmingham, Grenada, Cleveland. They better be prepared for this kid. He's got young receivers around him, and sometimes that makes for the task to be a little difficult. And he's a junior himself, so he's still learning on the job. But he is a talented player, and he is going to be a difference maker in this league this season and next season, and the next season to come. So Javen Hall gets my nod for honorable mention because I thought he had an impressive performance on the road at Narbonne.
Yeah, and I mean, looking at these juniors, I'm trying very hard to not look next year, because they got a lot of work ahead of them this year, and they're all doing something special. And the ones we're talking about, it seems like until after we talk about them, no one hears them, and some of these kids, they need it. We're trying to put these kids on a map, and that's the whole reason for you and me doing this.
Oh yeah,
is these kids are here, and a lot of them are toiling in obscurity, and if we can put a pin in them and be like, they're here, then we've done our job.
And it shouldn't feel like they're in obscurity because, like I said, you go out here and you cover as long as you've been involved in covering sports here in the Valley. And the time that I've been here covering sports in the Valley, I tell people all the time I grew up in New York City, as you can tell by stuff I got on. I am a New York City kid through and through. And the feeling I get watching these kids in the Valley play are the same from where I've come from. Tough, gritty. We play ball too. It's not just about the kids out in the southern section. They play ball out here too. And there's so much talent and so many great coaches and so many well-coached teams and programs and organizations out here that just need to be spotlighted on a weekly basis. And that's why doing this has been so much fun. Getting to talk to these coaches and pick their brains, getting to see these kids up close and personal, and seeing how talented a lot of these kids are. There are D1 kids right here in San Fernando. There are D2 kids in San Fernando. There are FBS level talents. There are kids who are going to go to JUCO and play 2 years and then take their butts to go play D1 places when they get more of a chance to develop because some kids just haven't been playing for that long. But what we're doing here is we're letting you all know you got to come watch these kids. These kids, and they're tough. They give it their full effort. They're out there hitting, and they're out here being physical and playing gritty. And volleyball is the best ball. I'm sorry, I am biased. I think that this is where the best ball is being played. Yeah, you got flashy stuff going on in the southern section, but you got heart and guts out here.
Next week is going to be heart and guts on full display. We took a look at this schedule when we were putting it together, and every single game made me go, ooh, I need to be there. And we're going to find a way to get eyes on as many of them as possible. The first one up on our list is Arleta at Monroe. And we just finished talking about that Arleta defense, and they're facing a Monroe offense, a Monroe team, actually, that we said is on a revenge tour. And that offense is high-powered. I mean, Brandon Williams just went off 158 receiving yards, 4 touchdowns. And so that's going to be an interesting question of this Monroe team that seems like it's all around solid. against Arleta's defense. And however they can try to get that offense back on track. Because, like we said, if that offense gets back on track, even a little bit this week, they could give Monroe fits. Because that defense is going to hunt and hunt and hunt.
And it's knuckle up time, right? We talked about our leaders' defense getting better and better and better every week. The offense is a little behind trying to catch up, but you know what you're getting from them on the defensive side of the ball. That front seven is hunting. But what have we talked about with Monroe as part of this revenge tour? Yeah, they've got leadership, and where the leadership is the strongest is along that offensive front. That offensive line is together. They communicate. They're on top of things, and they're going to be tested this week. If they want to win the East Valley, this is still even though they look different, this is still the champs. And they're going to come out and let a team like Monroe know, because as you get prepared for this week, you heard what they did at Verdugo Hills. And if you're our leader, you're saying that's not going to be us. Yeah, you try that shit on us if you want to. You do it if you think you can. And that's going to be the theme of this game. Our leader, the champs, are coming into your house. You're feeling good about yourselves. Well, let's see how good you really are. And they're going to make Monroe prove if they are for real this year. And I'm looking forward to it.
And Canoga is going into San Fernando, and both teams are coming off of good wins. But Canoga's was a statement. And that statement game was, hey, we may be short on some bodies, but they're not short on heart. They're not short on fight. And that could be a big slugfest.
Oh, yeah. And like I said, it's like I said, for some of these games and these teams that we're seeing, it's knuckle up time. Like we're establishing what our identity is, and we know what we have to do to win games. Quick anecdote, this because it made me think of this. My son his youth team played at Fillmore yesterday. We lost our first game this season, and we're a pretty good team. And the reason why we lost the game is because Fillmore came into the game 1-2. But you could tell that their coaches have had 3 or 4 weeks to kind of figure out what worked and what didn't work in their playbook. And you know what they did to us? My son, who is 5'1", 170, got triple teamed the entire game. He was not going to be involved in wrecking their plays. We were a little undersized because we were missing kids on the end of our line. They took the biggest kids and lined them up at left and right tackle. They ran off tackle the entire game. They threw the ball one time. It was a halfback pass halfway through the third quarter when we were already putting 9 or 10 guys in the box because we couldn't stop the run. And then they hit us with a halfback pass over the top. And the only thing we could do as an observer was, well, this was the team that said, this is who we are, and we're going to see if you guys can stop it. You guys are really good. Let's see how good you are. That's where we are at the season with a team like Canoga. They know they're undersized. They know they're undermanned. So what they're going to do to you every week is make you stop what they know that they can do. So this week is going to be no different.
And I mean, that goes right into 2 teams that have a singular identity. And that identity is, we're going to run the ball at you. Try and stop us. Granada is traveling to Chatsworth. And we've talked about the Stanleys. We've talked about Ramo. Both of these teams run the ball. I think you and I said it off camera. This game could be over in like 90 minutes.
Oh yeah, because it's one of those things where talented running backs grinding offenses. It's just going to be you bring your hard hat. You got to bring your hard hat today. If you're not ready to contain the edges, the Stanleys are going to kill you. If you're not sound in between the tackles, Raymond's going to kill you. So it's just about who's willing to stand in there and put a hat on someone. That's what that game is going to come down to. Both teams know there is no secret to what they're going to do. Can you be man enough to stand in there and stop what they're going to bring to you? Now, the Achilles heel for both of those teams, I think we kind of saw a little bit this week, is Granada might have a harder time playing from behind in games just because they're so young at the quarterback position. That kid, for him to even be playing as a underclassman, tells you that they believe in him, but it's going to take some time for them to be able to say, all right, well, the run game's getting a little stymied. You got to go make a play. That's a bit of an Achilles heel for them. And for Chatsworth, I've been saying this all season, they have got to clean up the mental mistakes. They are a talented team capable of doing so much. They could be one of those teams that gets into the D2 or D3 playoffs and just runs the table on people because they are talented and they are tough. But this week, like they saw with Heritage Christian, if you going up against a team that is talented and you are playing behind the chains the entire time, or you're making mistakes and giving them short fields, you will not be in the game. And that shouldn't be for them because they are so talented. They are a tough physical bunch. They're going to have to play a clean game if they want to beat Granada Hills.
From that slugfest to another, Grant is going to visit Chavez, and these are two teams that have shown that they are physical. They are going to fight in the trenches, and whether they pass the ball or run the ball, it's going to be a contest for all 48 minutes of the clock. Grant is coming off of their bye, a chance to kind of regroup after back-to-back tough losses. The loss against Sylmar in the rain, you want to kind of say something, but two teams played in the rain, and Sylmar did what they had to do. And Chavez took care of business last week against Poly, just now. And so now you come in, and Chavez is confident. They've got confidence. And they're looking at Grant like, well, you need to beat us, not the other way around. We don't need to beat you. You need to come in and beat us, because if we do our job, we should win if you can't beat us.
And that's the thing. One of the sneaky teams that I have had my eye on. I got to see them when they played Kennedy. I love this team. I think they're a small outfit, but they're a tough bunch, and they are going to fight you for 4 quarters. And sometimes their youth and inexperience gives away to a more talented squad, but it is never for a lack of effort, because that is what they coach at Chavez. The Eagles are full throttle in your face for 4 quarters. And this is an opportunity, if they can knock off Grant, to kind of establish themselves as maybe really being a contender that you have to deal with in the East Valley. Now, 2-0 start in the league would suggest that. So this is going to be a game that I think you're going to see both sides, because even for Grant, it's been so up and down and Jekyll and Hyde in terms of what you get from Grant. They look one way, they look that way against Sylmar, but a team that just knocked off the number 2 team in the city section had to struggle to pull out a win against them just a couple of weeks ago. So that there's talent there with Grant. They just never seem to be able to play at a high level consistently from game to game, heck, even from quarter to quarter. But it's all still there for them as well. This is their league opener, their chance to make a statement. So this is going to be a fun game coming out of the East Valley this week.
And, talking about games that could be fun, Cleveland could be in for a trap week. but it could be just fun to watch. Other way, they're traveling to Carson, their final non-league match of the season. I haven't had much on Carson, but when you're coming off a win against the number 2 team in the city, a team that's going open division, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Where do you go from here? And when you get a team like Carson, that could be a trap.
Oh yeah, and for a couple of reasons. One, that's an emotional game to have to then kind of lock back in for the next week. If you're playing Friday night, they're playing Thursday night. So not only do you have to kind of recover emotionally and kind of get locked in, and okay, we celebrated, we felt good about ourselves Friday night, but by the time Saturday turned around and it's time to go over film this weekend, you got to move past that. I have every confidence that Gunning and his staff will have them ready to go, but it's still a tough task. It's a tough ask coming off of this game to have a short week to then go travel. It'd be one thing if you were at home, but you got to go travel and go play a team that you know is going to give you a game. So maybe it's not so much a trap game, even though it feels like it, because of where it's positioned right before they jump into Elko next week, which will also be a tough test. But you just want to see how they come out and perform. I think if they come out and they beat Carson, especially if you beat them handily, I think we then really start the conversation about Birmingham being in trouble in this league, because Cleveland has looked every bit of the real deal. They played like they were the real deal this last week, and let's see what they do on a short week this week going on the road to Carson.
And, another team that has been billed as kind of real deal, and this is coming out of the Valley Mission, is Kennedy, and they're hosting Reseda. We've talked that Reseda is going to fight, but this is a game that just kind of looking at it at the surface level, you expect Kennedy to win, and nothing against Reseda, nothing against Austin Ward, but where you're at and you've got maybe 30 guys on your roster, Kennedy is supposed to come in and walk away with a win at home. But there's a reason you play the game.
What's the expression? The most dangerous dog is the one that's backed in the corner. Reseda is undermanned, but they come out and they fight their hardest. Like I said, they were on the short end of the stick against San Fernando, but you saw some things from them when I watched that game. And what it tells me is one of these weeks, this little small band of brothers is going to put it together. And you hope it's not against you. And maybe this could be one of those weeks, because this is not a team that's going to go winless. They just aren't. They're going to beat somebody, I think. They're going to beat a couple of people, because you can see that there is some talent there that is trying their hardest. And all they need is for something to break. They just need a breakthrough. And they're playing hard for Ward. They really are on a week-to-week basis. It's just not coming together yet because they just don't have the numbers. But Kennedy has to be on their toes this week. Cassidy better have those guys ready to play, because Reseda is going to give them everything they got. So it'll be fun. It'll be fun.
It should be. And another team that's been just physically putting everyone to the test, even though their record doesn't show it, is Poly. And they're going to NoHo. And the adage we used a couple weeks ago, when we were comparing Poly versus Campbell Hall and Arleta versus Campbell Hall, and Poly made Campbell Hall work. And at that point, we still haven't had a chance to see Poly. Haven't seen Campbell Hall yet, but you're looking at teams we've seen and common opponents, and just based on that, Poly has made their opponents work. And North Hollywood is coming off of a game where they had to work and they were grinding. So it's not new to them. But this is kind of a rivalry game in terms of geography.
Mhm.
When you look at North Hollywood and their geographic rivals, they have two. They've got Grant, like 3/4 of a mile down the road, and then a little bit further up is Pauley, and these three teams don't like each other.
Mhm.
And so with Pauley going into North Hollywood, they're looking to make a statement. They're looking to kind of do what that Arleta defense did and hold Jalen Burt and Ronnie Gibson to under 100. Heck, if they could hold them combined under 100, they got a chance to win. But again, what is this team going to do outside of the defense, outside of being physical, outside of making you work? And we're still trying to figure that out.
Sometimes the best motivators in life are just, I want to make you miserable. Sometimes it can be as simple as you think you're good enough to win a league title. We want to rain all over this parade. Y'all are going to feel good. Y'all are going to feel good coming off of beating all the defending league champs. You win, you shut them out at home. Oh, you're coming home. We would love for you guys to come out of this game 1-1 and have everybody be confused about just who is the better team in this league. You know, like you said, just from geographics, these kids know each other. They're going to know each other. There's going to be some smack talking going on out there. And social media, there's going to be things flying about and said about each other. And sometimes that's enough. That's enough of a motivator for you to go in and give somebody a good game. If you're Poly, the mission is simple. As long as Burton Gibson don't put 350 on us, we can stay in this game. And if we can be in this game in the fourth quarter, we can figure out a way to get a stop, get a score, maybe steal one from a team that thinks that they're wholly better than us. It is always a motivating factor when you know that you can play with somebody and you think they look down on you. And that's what this game is going to come down to. North Hollywood knows that they should beat this team. North Hollywood's looking at their league schedule and wrote W next to this game. Can Poly go into their backyard and change that? And it's going to be intriguing. It's going to be intriguing because, like I said, they are 1-3, but this team kind of feels like they're a little bit better than that 1-3. When you look at some of the teams and the circumstances of which they played under, this team, that 1-3 might be a little misleading. Like I said, they got off to a rocky start in the Chavez game, but they kind of played them even in the second half. It just got away from them a little bit. I think that this team is going to make a game of this. This could be one of the shocks of the week if North Hollywood does not come into this game ready to play.
From a potential shock to a team coming off of a shock, Panorama's going into Sylmar. And just looking at what Panorama had done and looking at the fact that Canoga is undermanned, the thought, at least for me, I know looking at it, was this could be close because Canoga is going to fight you. But the expectation was for Panorama to come out on top. And so they were surprised. And now they go to Sylmar. And that is going to be a big one because it's Sylmar's league opener.
Mm-hmm.
And they want to plant their flag and say, no, we are the team that's going to be up there with Kennedy for this league title. And Panorama wants to right the ship. I think that's going to be a big, big battle.
Yeah, for sure. Like I said, that Panorama and Canoga fought each other tooth and nail. It was one of those games where it was just a heavyweight battle. Just everybody landing left hooks and check left hooks at every turn. And for Panorama, it's going to leave a bad taste in your mouth because you left opportunities out there just from the mistakes that you made. with some bad footwork. They had a drive where they had they tried to run a reverse, and I don't know, there was some a confusion as to who was going to take the double reverse, and they put the ball on the ground, and Canoga picked it up, and it turned into a Canoga score. It's one of those things where, like, Panorama is going to be motivated to come into this game because they feel like they let one slip last week, that they were capable of pulling a game out. And they know they're going up against a team that's won 3 in a row. Like I said, since Sylmar dropped that opener to Fairfax, they have looked every bit the part of a team that feels like, okay, they're going to be in the mix. They're going to be there. Can they beat Kennedy? We don't know. We got till October 21st to figure that out, if they're good enough to kind of stay in that mix with them, as we all kind of figure Kennedy's the team to beat in this league. But they can kind of start to prove that they're in that conversation if they can come and hang one on Panorama this week. So it's going to be interesting. This is one of those games that are very intriguing because these are the two teams that seem like they've emerged as the team that's going to try to stay in the running with Kennedy. So for them to be matching up this early, it puts some more importance on that game because you don't get to make this up later. Like, this is your opportunity to kind of stay in that lead pack. So I'm excited to see how this one turns out.
We mentioned Campbell Hall earlier. They're hosting St. John in kind of what I look at as our southern section kind of hidden gems. Because we know some of the other southern section teams, they're going to do what they do. But you've got Campbell Hall, who's been fighting pretty good this year, and St. John, who might have turned a corner. And that's one that I think is worth keeping an eye on.
For sure. It's an opportunity for them to start to build some momentum here. St. Genevieve came into the year thinking that they had the horses to kind of make some noise, especially in their league. And this is one of those games where if you're going to do that, you got to go out and you got to handle business. Is it going to be easy to go on the road and go to Campbell Hall and win? No, of course not. But when you look at that roster, they've got the players to be able to play with those teams. And with every team left on their schedule, they should be in the mix. So can they go to Campbell Hall and put their second W together and really start to feel like they can do some things? I mean, we'll see, but it should be a battle. I don't believe that Campbell Hall is a team that I would look at and say, oh, they can't beat them. Like we've seen our city section teams give Campbell Hall a fight. So St. John should be able to go and be successful against them. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that game.
I mean, we're coming off of an exciting week of football, and we've got an exciting week of football coming up. Honestly, I think we're going to be saying this every week. Every week, there's nothing bigger than your next game. And that's the cliche, and coaches know it. But week in and week out, it proves to be true. So I'm excited about the week coming up. I'm excited about the week that just ended. Just brimming.
Oh, yeah. And before we go, I'll just say, if you are listening to us, thank you for supporting us. We're doing this because we're putting a spotlight on the Valley and on all these teams. We want everyone. We want to cover everybody as much as we can, and we want everybody to know that we're watching these kids, we're watching these coaches, we're watching these programs, and the environment in the Valley in terms of the support that people give to these kids and how they pack these stadiums and go out and watch these kids play. We're trying to give that same support, but just through our medium in the media. So if you're listening or you're watching, thank you. Please leave a like, subscribe to us, leave comments. We'll read them. If you got questions you want us to answer at some point, we'll do, when we feel like we're at a point where we got enough comments on our podcast, we'll do a mailbag where we'll answer questions the best we can later on. But thank everybody for support. Please like, subscribe, tell your friends about us. Tell other coaches about us. We're talking about everybody. So thank you guys. Thanks for the
Yeah,
support.
I can't say thank you enough. Um, and keep listening. There's going to be nuggets we drop that even surprise us a few weeks down the line in terms of where it grows. But yeah, thank you guys for listening. Again, please like, subscribe, share with your friends, share with your family. And we'll see you next week. And until then, he's Kenny Hodges and I'm Arsha Versarian. Have a good one.
Peace.